control the vertical.
Welcome to Anthologic, the TV anthology podcast. I am your host, Mark. Anthologic is a podcast dedicated to exploring the good, the bad, and the odd of horror, science fiction, and the best of mystery suspense anthology shows and series on TV. Join me as we slip through the cracks of reality to approach the extremes of experience, where we can peruse the stories and art of a sinister fairground of strange and wonderful rides. And now we go on to the show that is the focus of this particular episode. Welcome to this episode of Anthology with your host Mark. Today I'm covering an episode from a very, very old anthology series called Science Fiction Theatre. It's an American one which concerns, it's kind of science fiction, but it's also pseudoscience or sort of science documentary. It's got a different vibe for each episode, really. And it first aired on American TV on April the 9th, 1965, carried on until April the 6th, 1957. 78 episodes in 2 seasons. It wasn't on a specific channel. It went into syndication pretty much straight away. They filmed a number of episodes and sold them onto small stations. So it's kind of a semi-documentary, a what-if kind of show. Usually about science, but some aspects of the real world, but also some exploratory ideas. And I believe a lot of the ideas were lifted from articles on Scientific American. They used that as like, let's write a sort of docudrama about this particular subject. For examples of the sort of things it covered are things like telepathy, robots, man-eating insects like ants, flight into space, possibilities around time travel, that kind of thing. That was the kind of vibe. It was hosted by Truman Bradley. I think all the way through, he was a fairly prestigious radio and TV announcer and apparently an actor in the 1940s films. So they basically, for each episode, extrapolate some idea or some notion or something in the zeitgeist about science and sort of we'll try to present it as if, could you say it isn't true? That kind of vibe. There was a strong emphasis on science, I must say. It was colourful. The very first episode I watched, which I'll talk about in a bit, was in colour, Eastman colour. It's got that very specific weird look that looks a bit like colourised movies now. But this was actually filmed in colour, using Eastman colour. The music is sort of expansive and sort of orchestral. It's kind of cool. But as I say, most of the episodes were based on current issues of Scientific American, which was a great magazine, I have to say. I used to read it a lot in the 70s and 80s, and I always found it quite an interesting magazine. And indeed, they kind of pays homage to this in some of the episodes by having issues of Scientific American on Truman Bradley's desk while he was talking. So there were other ones series before it. It wasn't the earliest anthology show, but it was a very early one, and those tended to be more like straight dramas or sort of sci-fi, straight sci-fi. This was more sci-fact but extrapolated kind of thing, but it is seen as like a predecessor to like various other sort of sci-fi stroke horror anthology shows like The Twilight Zone and Outer Limits, that kind of thing. There was a number of famous actors that did appear in it in various episodes. For example, DeForest Kelley, Vincent Price, Basil Rathbone, which is a few names. And I looked through the cast of directors, and there's a couple of directors I recognise. Jack Arnold in particular directed episode 2, for example. Jack Arnold's probably most famous for directing The Incredible Shrinking Man, one of the great sci-fi movies of the 50s. And also William Castle was one of the directors. William Castle went on to direct various sort of schlocky, exploitative, but pretty fun movies. I wouldn't disparage anyone from watching a William Castle film, but I think, for example, The Tingler was one of his, which is a great fun sort of film. And apparently some of the episodes were a bit more fanciful. They talked about extraterrestrials or fiddling with human affairs. Now, the feel of it actually reminded me quite a lot of Plan 9 from Outer Space, and I say that not suggesting it was amateurish. I think Plan 9 from Outer Space was lifting some of the tropes that were used in this series. A sort of serious, middle-aged man talking from a position of apparent authority about things. In Plan 9 from Outer Space, Criswell was that man, the psychic Criswell, it has to be said. Sitting behind the desk as well in that movie, much like Truman Badley. So I think there was a certain influence of this style of presenting stories in the 50s, certainly in America. So it was, like I say, the music was pretty cool. It kind of started in a science laboratory kind of setting, or sort of formal sort of workplace, engineer's workplace. So again, giving it a feel of a sort of sciencey kind of project. And it was, it wasn't great. Let's put it that way. The first one, the one I'm going to talk about tonight, is one called Beyond. Now, this involved a test pilot flying at speeds that had not been achieved before, but claiming that he could see another craft and bailing out. But no one can find any evidence of this, and so he's questioned about it. Various theories. There's a lot of feel of a procedural or a sort of discussion about the whole episode. They're talking about, could it have been this, could it have been that. For example, there's a point where he hits a certain arc where he's a weightlessness, and it's possible his pen was floating, and in the sort of mental confusion of going at that sort of speed, he may have taken that as a bigger object much further away. Things like that. But it's interesting that the show undercuts that by sort of giving you a reason that can't be the actual case. Though everyone seems earnest, and everyone's kind of they're not disbelieving him, they're just trying to suggest ways that he may have mistakenly taken something as something else. It was okay. That's the best I can say about it. The weird colour made it feel like it was an old black and white colorised thing, even though it wasn't. I think the second season was black and white, but the first one was definitely an Eastman colour. Eastman colour has got a very weird palette, and it degrades over time. Though the copy I saw of this didn't look particularly degraded, it was just an odd kind of look to it. I really haven't got much to say about it other than that. It ran for a good time. 39 episodes per season, 2 seasons, as I say. So it was delivering fairly consistently, and the episode was about 25 minutes, so it would have taken a 30-minute TV slot, I imagine. I haven't really got much more to say about it than that. I wouldn't recommend it. It doesn't bear up that well. Apparently there has been a release on Region 1 of the whole set in 2015, so it is available. There are a few episodes on YouTube too. Not the one I watched. I could not find that on YouTube, but there are a few others, and some of them are black and white. That'll be from season 2, and some are in colour, and you can kind of get a feel for it. Though some I had a quick look at on YouTube didn't seem to have the intros that I saw in episode 1, and from reading about it, I believe should have been on all episodes, so I'm not quite sure what's going on there. Yeah, okay, so science fiction theatre. And yeah, I think I'll wind it up there. But before I go, may I ask, is anybody out there?
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to